Statement of offense filed in court includes allegations of Papadopoulos making numerous contacts with senior Trump campaign officials about facilitating meetings with Russians and getting encouraging feedback. It said that in April, the overseas professor introduced Papadopoulos to an individual in Moscow with connections to the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MFA for short. The filing lists multiple communications by Papadopoulos in attempts to arrange a meeting between the campaign with the Russian government, and alleges that after several weeks of further communications regarding a potential off-the-record meeting with Russian officials on or about August 15, 2016, an unnamed official described as campaign supervisor told Papadopoulos that, quote, "I would encourage you." And another foreign policy advisor to the campaign said, encourage you to make the trip to Russia if it is feasible. Interesting.
You know, what I'm struck by reading through this plea agreement is the same thing I'm struck by with the Donald Jr. story that we had a couple of months ago with the meeting in June of 2016, is that when they're presented in the Trump campaign with an opportunity to get dirt from a foreign power about the political opponent, they don't run from it. They're thrilled by it. Donald Jr. said, I love it. That was his quote when he got that email. Another campaign might say, I don't want to go anywhere near this. I don't want to touch this. I know what the implication would be of my having a relationship with a foreign power meddling in this election.
Let's just stop just for 1 second and say every campaign that any of us have ever known about, worked on, reported for, would have all said, get away from me. Get behind me, Satan. I want nothing to do with any of that. The fact that they ran straight to it, Willie, is something that, again, in this bizarre political world we live in now, something that we sometimes overlook. And it's so strange.
And it speaks to the tone of the campaign, that Papadopoulos went back to his superiors, ran back to his superiors and said, I've got this stuff, and they encouraged him to push forward and go have the meeting. They said, we're not going to send Donald Trump to the meeting, but we encourage you to go. So it'd be one thing if they, quote, volunteer, said, oh, I'm excited by this, but then to go to a supervisor who encouraged it and didn't say, whoa, cut ties, don't touch that stuff. It tells you a lot about what was going on in the campaign.
One other thing that, again, we need to just do a spot check on Halloween.
Boo.
Is that right? Boo. Scary out there. On Halloween 2017, is we need to go back to the first statements that Donald Trump and everybody around Donald Trump said about Russia, which was, oh, Russia? Wait, no, we have no contacts with Russia. Think about what they were saying back. You know, Mike Pence, oh, heaven's sakes. Gee whiz, golly bang, we just talked to the American people, doggone it. And you can go down the list. Donald Trump, no, we didn't talk to him. You look at what we've just found out in the past 6, 7, 8 months about how much they all have lied about their contacts with the Russians.
Well, just look what we found out in the last 24 hours through Papadopoulos, through the public announcement that they've had him since July. As Willie indicated, I mean, this is not as if the campaign was approached by, someone from Iceland about campaign stuff. This is Russia, not our friend, not an ally. And the Papadopoulos revelations yesterday does get to one thing, and it gets to the definition of collusion. If you read the indictment, I mean, collusion is defined as a secret agreement or cooperation, especially for an illegal or deceitful purpose. That revelation yesterday is the definition of collusion. So now you have the introduction of the reality of collusion into the White House.
Which is why, of course, as Heidi said, the Twitter feed went silent yesterday.
Yep, and Sarah Sanders was asked about all this at the White House yesterday, downplaying, as we said, Papadopoulos' position within the campaign. Here's what she said.
Can you just explain what George Papadopoulos' role with the campaign was?
It was extremely limited. It was a volunteer position. And again, no activity was ever done in an official capacity on behalf of the campaign in that regard.
But as we showed you, Papadopoulos had exposure to top campaign officials, including the current Attorney General Jeff Sessions and President Trump himself during this national security meeting at what is now the Trump Hotel in Washington.
But though, maybe
just very limited.
Maybe he was bringing in Diet Coke or coffee. Maybe
no, he was at the table.
Maybe he knew somebody, and because Donald. I don't think Donald Trump ever even mentioned this guy's name as having to do anything with the campaign, right, Willie?
Well, Joe, Papadopoulos is one of the first officials Trump named as a foreign policy
Really?
advisor.
What?
Boo!
We heard you might be announcing your foreign policy advisory team soon.
If you want, I could give you some of the names. I wouldn't
Be delighted.
I wouldn't mind. Carter Page, PhD. George Papadopoulos. He's an oil and energy consultant. Excellent guy.
Trick or treat. Heidi?
I just wanted to say something to the previous point about collusion, just reminding everyone of how amazing the timeline is now based on the revelations from yesterday. We now know that the Trump campaign knew about the existence of these emails for 3 months until they were dumped. And when were they dumped? Timing-wise, they were dumped within hours of the Access Hollywood tape about Donald Trump. So just let that sink in a little bit about
It's all
in terms of the
sinking in.
potential for coordination there. But in terms of the White House distancing itself from Papadopoulos, trying to make him into this campaign volunteer, I mean, we have the email evidence here that he was corresponding with high-level, being encouraged by high-level officials within the campaign. He was reporting to Jeff Sessions,
Right.
who, by the way, later also lied about his own contacts with the Russians. And I think it also puts that Don Jr. email in light ahead of his meeting with the Russians, where he was told this information is part of the campaign to help your father. And again, there was no questions there. What campaign?
Yeah, part of in the What campaign, and also, of course, you have Roger Stone on Twitter, I think, back when he used to be able to be on Twitter, actually talking about Podesta, that his day was coming. What did he say, in the barrel or whatever? And saying that right before they started leaking the Podesta emails. Heidi's right. The timeline that Bob Mueller and his team must have up on the wall must be a very frightening time.
Another thing the Don Jr. meeting and this Papadopoulos encounter have in common, they both lied about it after the fact. And that's why he was convicted in Papadopoulos' case. And remember, Don Jr. changed how many times? 3, 4 times who was in the meeting, how many people were in the meeting, and then eventually what the meeting was about. It wasn't about adoption, it was about dirt from Hillary Clinton. So they've not only have they engaged with the Russian government, they've lied about it when asked about it.
And who was in there? And by the end, we find out after like 12 lies that there were like 2 Russian interpreters in this meeting.
Yeah, exactly. There were 4 people in the Russian delegation that were part of, in addition to Rob Goldstone, the British music promoter, but 5 people who were sent basically by the Russians to go meet with the senior echelons of the campaign. And I think Heidi's point is exactly right. It shows that when Don Jr. got that email from Rob Goldstone, he wasn't like, oh, this is an interesting meeting. I got no idea what this is about. They knew exactly what this was about.
And they now know that the special prosecutor has volumes of information to lead them right down the road. Emails, everything.
They also know, Mike, they have 2 choices. They can fight it the way Paul Manafort fought it and possibly spend the rest of his life in jail, or they can cooperate and get a lesser charge and probably be on probation for 6 months.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's a clarifying, it's a
little chilling, actually.
It's a clarifying moment for people to make a choice on whether they want to spend a lot of time in jail or whether they want to tell the truth.
And when they're speaking to the media from the podium, just stop lying.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.